Well, a very ticklish issue there when we're talking about environment, but let's drill deeper also and we try and tackle other issues. Kenya's debt has risen to 4.57 trillion shillings for the half year ending December 2017, a 19.5% increase from 2016 or 2016's 3.827 trillion shillings. This brings the debt to 51.95% of gross domestic product. This is according to the quarterly economic and budgetary review for the first half of 2017-2018 published by the National Treasury, which attributes this record level of debt to increased external debt due to exchange rate fluctuations and disbursements from external loans debt during the period. Net public debt increased by 769.9 billion shillings to stand at 4.22 trillion shillings. Revenue collection still remains a drag as it has once again fallen short of the target by 68.3 billion shillings to close the half year at 709 billion shillings. And that of course is still on the front page of the daily or the Business Daily as well. It crosses the 4.5 trillion shilling mark. We want to discuss Kenya's rising debt, and of course this is in light of the Eurobond as well. Where are we headed to when we're settling our country and our children also with this much debt? Of course, let's begin with you, Boni Khalwale. Let's begin with Dr. Otenda Molo, then we'll come to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
Thank you, Debarl. On Eurobond, in 7 years, my colleagues in Jubilee will be crying the way they're crying on Mount now. Because all the flags are up, and we are raising them, and they're being dismissed. Previously, it was us in the coalition who are raising it. Now it's being raised by all others, including the IMF, and they're dismissing it. Let me say this. One, this whole idea of Eurobond, I think, is the greatest scandal of our time, greater than all the others. You cannot go and seek to secure another 202 billion when your chief auditor, the Auditor General, has raised issues that have not been answered to date on the last 273 billion, 75 billion that was secured, and has actually suggested that a good chunk of that amount never arrived where it should have been and was never used. You must answer those questions first before you go seeking a second. The second point I want to make is that in 10 years only, by 2007, from the analysis I've seen, our entire debt was only 840 billion. In 10 years, we have now moved to 4.6 trillion. What that means, in my estimation, and I think in the analysis, every Kenyan, including a Kenyan who was born this morning as we are speaking, including a 100-year-old Kenyan, the poorest and the richest owes about 101,000 shillings. In my constituency, I have the residents about 126,600. In my estimation, we owe, as a constituency, about 12.7 billion shillings. Where on earth will my poor constituents ever get that amount of money to pay? I think where we are is that we have a reckless regime that does not want to focus on the future, but wants to focus on the present. We have a regime that wants to sell this narrative that we are borrowing for developmental projects. And if you ask yourself, the last amount of money that was borrowed, which development did it go to? You will not find. This one that we are borrowing, which development? You will not find. In the end, the money is lost between the crevices. You are told, oh, so much was given to this ministry, so much was given to this ministry, and yes, those ministries have their line budgets. I think this is reckless. If we want to avoid another scandal, another situation where, as a country, we will not be able to go anywhere, even long after those in leadership right now are out, we must discontinue this trend.
Thank you. Boni Khalwale.
I think we owe it to viewers that we simplify this mystery of Eurobond. Viewers, there is absolutely nothing wrong in borrowing on an international stock exchange. It's in order. For as long as the borrowed money is used A, to fund actual projects, B, to reduce domestic borrowing, and C, reduces inflation. Eurobond 1 has not done any project. And even there are some people who believe that information that was in the knowledge of the late Jacob Juma on the issue of Eurobond 1 might have been part of the reason why he met the tragic end that he did. President Uhuru, to carry the country with him on issue of Eurobond II, he started by saying that through his ministers that this Eurobond was oversubscribed. It is true, Mr. President. What you didn't tell them is that actually you went for $2 billion, but actually got oversubscription of $14 billion. Why? Because the London Stock Exchange thought the deal was too good to leave. How too good? Kenyans, after you've borrowed 202 billion shillings, you're going to pay interest alone 323 billion shillings. And if together with it you pay the principal, you're going to pay over 500 billion shillings. An investor who was buying that bill would be foolish not to take that kind of chance. Could it be that the people in Jubilee don't have children like the way Otiendo Molo has, that they don't care? Because this debt will start biting when the due date of payment of that loan is up. And that is when, because most of these people will either be dead or retired, our children will be suffering. We want to urge all Kenyans to forget politics about this one. If we lose the economy of this country, we are going to end up where Zimbabwe is.
All right, thank you. Let's hear from Aaron Cheriwa.
You know, the most difficult thing to do on this panel, Debarl, is to have a debate sometimes with men of good reason who choose to either mislead or outrightly lie about things which they know are not true or they are speaking about. You know, let me tell you, Debarl, when you first, and I must commend Boni for debunking for us, though that is the only truthful thing that he said in his statement, that there is nothing wrong in borrowing. Businesses do borrow. At individual levels, you do borrow. The question is, what is it that you do with this money that you're borrowing? And second, each and every time that Kenya goes to the international markets, and it's not only Kenya, it's good that you inform our viewers, that all countries at certain levels, they get to this point where Kenya is, where you go out and seek for funds to carry out certain activities which you believe will spur your economy and you'll be able to get good returns upon it. The thing to measure, and economists will tell you this, there are many ways of measuring debt insolvency of a country or either an organization. For countries, the most known tool is something called debt to GDP ratio, where you measured what is your debt against what you're producing as a country. The red line for borrowing as a country is at 70%, and this is at IMF, World Bank, and all organizations of international repute place it at 70%. Our debt to GDP ratio right now stands at 51%. So we are still so healthy, and it will never get to this point where you're positing. Let me remind you, Dr. Otiende, that where we are getting this money, it is not a donation. It is not people who have money that are placing it at risk. If there was the kind of risk that they are positing on this panel this morning, these investors will never have taken their money to risk. If this money was coming to be lost in Kenya, such that in 3, 4, 5, or 6 years, our country will not be able to put out this fund into good use and pay back, we wouldn't be able to get these funds. But the reason we are able to get oversubscription is because each and every time information has been sought. Dr. Otiende, I don't know where you were on that day, where Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich published a full 2-page commercial on the projects that had been funded by our previous Eurobond. I am awaiting for him to do the same on this one that they have just done. So when you come on a panel this morning and say that you don't know what this project has done, I think you're being insincere. The reason we are going to borrow Debarl is because we want to industrialize. There are certain things that we want to do, which unfortunately as a country, we cannot afford. So long as this money is being put to prudent use, there's nothing absolutely wrong with it.
All right. And I think we'll drill deeper next time to see some of this, to try and itemize some of the projects that you're talking about.
That would be fantastic.
If it's a long term,
I will
so that
be
we can
more
see.
than glad.
Thank you. Let's hear from Jared. Jared.
Well, thanks, Debarl. From the outset, we must agree that Jubilee cannot be trusted with the economy. The financial crisis we face as a nation is that Jubilee's borrowing is what has caused the current state of affairs. Let me remind the nation that the 7.6 billion syndicated loan borrowed in 2015 is maturing this year, and it has to be repaid. Now, you talk about Eurobond. $2 billion will mature in 2024. Therefore, the government must set up a repayment schedule that respects that. Secondly, thirdly, my brother here, I think he understands little economy, but let me enlighten him. That IMF's recommended...
But
he's
lying.
He just gave you time.
You were given your time.
No.
We are in 2018. How can 30 years be 2024?
Aaron,
why are you allowing him to lie?
No.
Simple mathematics.
Just let...
I
okay, finish.
said
How can
$2
it be
billion
mature in
shillings
2024?
will mature in 2024, and therefore
simple
must be...
mathematics.
No, I understand.
You must lie
Another
with
lie,
some
another
Okay,
lie
Aaron,
that
please.
he has, and
Please.
let me put this into perspective. The recommended IMF's recommended benchmark for emerging countries such as Kenya is 40%
Nothing like
of
that.
GDP, not
Nothing like
70%. And this is common knowledge. You can Google recommended for emerging countries.
You don't have to Google
So he can't
basic
come here to
information.
defend Jubilee with lies. We understand economy better, and that is why we wanted to get into government to turn around this country. And let me remind you, in 2013, when Raila Odinga was the prime minister, the GDP ratio was 44%. The debt ratio was 44% to the GDP. Today it is 55% and still
51.
counting.
You keep mixing
55%
figures, Jared.
and still counting.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I can sacrifice the 4% to make him happy.
All right, thank
but
you.
Raila left it at 44%. So these are issues that must be tackled.
What
What has brought us to where we are is corruption. We are borrowing money, firstly to pay debts, like digging one hole to fill the other.
Thank you.
Borrowing from Paul to pay Peter. And that is what Jubilee is basically doing. And all the monies that come in, instead of putting them in a capital investment structure, they are stolen.
All right,
they are in the pockets of some people whom I know.
Whom we know.
Some could not be very far away from me.
Obatangi, let's hear from you as
No,
we're
I'm
winding up
saying
very
Nairobi.
briefly. Okay, we're winding up. Obatangi, it's 8 on the nose, please.
Maybe I think Debarl to do this panel next time when you tell this new man to bring his CV.
We need to wind up.